we had a crisis in 2008. That was a very particular kind of crisis where a not very clever move by, I think, a not very clever Treasury Secretary at the time decided he would bankrupt a company he didn't like. It was Hank Paulson, who came from Goldman Sachs, not my part of the Sachs family I need to explain. So I just want to be clear, different branch, I suppose. And he didn't like Lehman Brothers, so he decided literally one weekend, rather than try to sell off Lehman Brothers, he was going to close it down. And it was a kind of lame-brained operation, and he created one of the greatest financial crises of modern history.
Wait.
Yes.
You think Paulson created the '08 meltdown because he had a grudge against Lehman?
Yeah, basically. He wanted to teach them a lesson. He thought they were lazy, terrible firm, which they may well have been, by the way. But he decided in 2008, there was a housing bubble, and the housing bubble was breaking, and a lot of the investment banks were on the edge because they had invested in crappy mortgages and that they were trying to securitize. So it was a fragile situation. We would have had a normal downturn for sure. We would have had a recession. But Paulson decided in September 2008 that rather than do another rescue where you take a weak bank and you may add some public money and then you sell it off to a buyer. And there was a potential buyer for Lehman Brothers. It was Barclays, a British bank. And the USG government could have put in a bit of money or taken some of the bad stuff off the balance sheets and given the rest to Barclays. But Paulson wanted to do two things. He wanted to teach Lehman Brothers a lesson. I believe, you can't prove this stuff, but Lehman was kind of a rival of Goldman, and I think there was that personal bit from what I know. But also, Paulson thought, we should show the markets we can be tough and firm and let the markets determine the outcome. So he said, we're not going to do any patch up to get Lehman into somebody else's hands. We're going to just let it close, let it go bankrupt. And that was September 14th, 2008. And when the markets opened the next day, he had triggered one of the greatest financial crises of history, actually, within...
Why have I never heard the story?
Maybe they didn't want to advertise how unbelievably incompetent they were. But this was complete incompetence. And by the way, it was incompetence of the whole economic team. It included the Fed, New York Fed, Washington, the Treasury. This was a crisis that absolutely was not only human-made, but you can pinpoint the hour and the day and the event. Because the point I was making, because you asked me a question about...
Sorry, my jaw's open. I mean, I'm kind of interested in the subject. I read a book on it, I guess, and...
You asked me a question about credit card debt, and the
No,
point,
but that's just so interesting.
I was making a digression.
Is this widely... Well, I'm digressing again, but is this widely known?
It's not very well understood. It's not a secret, but I can explain why it's not understood, but in a moment. But the point is, a financial panic is a specific kind of event. It is the same event as when people are trampled running out of a stadium.
Yes.
Okay? So that happens once every, I don't know how many hundred football games. Something happens. There's a fight, people start running and then trampling, and then lots of people get crushed. So that's a specific event. It's a panic. In finance, the same thing can happen. And financial panics happen on occasion throughout history, and you can identify them. And usually there is a cause that is a trigger of it. But with a panic, like a stampede out of a stadium, the cause is completely incommensurate with the outcome. In other words, the cause may be that someone punched someone else, and that started commotion, and 1,000 people got trampled in the end. So the cause was some stupid little thing, but then it led to a cascade of disaster. That's exactly what a financial panic is, or a bank run. I don't know if anybody ever remembers my favorite movie of my youth and for my children, Mary Poppins. But Mary Poppins is a children's story, of course, that has a bank run in it, where the young boy wants to get his 2 pence out of the bank, and there's resistance, and he starts screaming, "You won't give me my money back." And then everyone runs to the bank to take their money out, and the bank fails. And it's a panic. So Hank Paulson made a panic in September 14, 2008. And he made it deliberately. The action was deliberate. The outcome was not deliberate. He had no idea what he was about to do, which was to create this rush for the exits by all banks on all loans all over the world within 3 days. And that's what he created. And it created the biggest economic downturn since the Great Depression itself. And that's, by the way, an interesting, very interesting story also, because just like a panic can create something that's completely incommensurate with any fundamental reason, but it leads to a total disaster, the opposite can sometimes happen also, which I was reminded because the Great Depression, which was this calamitous event, in the days up to Franklin Roosevelt's inauguration, which was March 4th, 1933, there was a bank panic in the United States. And by the time that Roosevelt became president on March 4th, 1933, the whole U.S. banking system had closed down because everyone had rushed to the banks to withdraw their money, just like in Mary Poppins, but it was all over the U.S. So the whole U.S. banking system was closed when Franklin Roosevelt became president on March 4th, 1933. And with a smile and a tilt of his head, he said, "And I firmly believe that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself." And with those words, people stopped panicking. And they went back and put their money in the bank. And within a few days, the U.S. banking system reopened. And it was Franklin Roosevelt's personality and his spirit and his tilt of the head and his smile and his phrase that it's only fear that we have to fear that undid the panic. After that, many reforms were made, like the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation and the SEC and public reporting, and many things were done. But the banks actually opened on a matter of words. So you asked me a question, why did I make this big digression? Because financial markets are capable of creating all sorts of disasters. And the first rule that you learn is be careful. Don't let liquidity mess you up. Don't let panics destroy things. Hank Paulson apparently didn't know any of that.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. We hope you'll subscribe to it. And by the way, you can hit the little bell on there and get notifications every time we produce a video. We hope you'll do that also.